Niels, if I were to believe in both God and evolution, I would have to believe that God created a system that caused untold millions and tens of millions of animals to suffer horrendous death in this process. Is that the God you believe in?
In a sense, it is, actually. I mean, it is the God I believe in because it is a God who takes the risks that is involved by creating a developing world, an evolutionary world. And evolution works by trial and errors. And so errors belongs to the package deal of creation.
But is animal death and suffering an error? Is that a risk? It doesn't seem like a risk. It seems like an intrinsic, fundamental part of the process without which you can't have evolution.
Actually, you're right on this point. There are risks, but the fact that something will be hurtful and that we all have to die as biological creatures, and that if we have a central nervous system, then we will be able to feel both pleasure and pain. You just mentioned the word horrendous. I think that horrendous evils are not on every street corner, but we will all decay and disorganize and die, and we will always have our share of pain in the universe, and this is, in a sense, unavoidable. And I think that this is one of the new things that Darwin has taught theology. It is simply to accept that the evils of this world, like tsunamis and earthquakes at the physical level, and also mass extinction and the death of all of us, are not due to human sin, but is part of the way in which the world is developing. So it is the price that we have to pay for living as the biological organisms we are, who are developing.
If God is the creator of everything and God is all-powerful, one can only conclude that the system of evolution is precisely what God wanted, so that these millions of creatures, many of whom only had suffering in their lives with their central nervous system feeling the crunch of teeth and claw, is the system that God felt was the best way to develop whatever God's developing.
I will try to continue to be strong on this point, because I think that we will have bloodshed if we have blood. And we will have something like prey-predator relationship if we want to have the beautiful movements of lions and tigers and other animals. And we will need to be carnivores if we are human beings who have survived during evolution. So I simply want to take in this new tough fact in my way of theologizing. But then I want to say that this is not the same as saying that this is the end story. I mean, the religious view of reality, at least as entertained by Christians and also by others, Muslims and Buddhists, actually, Yodo Shinshu Buddhists and by Hindus, is that there is another life to come. That this is not the last word of what the Christians call God. There will also be a world of resurrection. There will also be a transformation of the world. There will also be, minimally at least, the fact that we will be memorized by God. That will be a very minimal vision of eschatology, or the view that there will be something more than just this life lived within the confines of birth and death.
Does that apply to all those animals that suffered horrendous death as well?
For me, it does, but this is a very controversial point within Christian theology at the moment. Who will be saved? Is it only those who are belonging to the church or who are baptized? That would be a very, very strict view. Or would it be every good person of good heart, like Jesus himself seemed to presuppose? For example, in Matthew 25, which is a parable about the last judgment, and where people are actually judged according to their deeds and not their specific beliefs. Or is it something that will apply to all human beings but not to animals and not to the world? Or is it, as I think, is it simply necessary to imagine a world which has transformed figures, in which there will be minimally a memory of our lives? That will be a very minimalist eschatology on Christian resources. We will all be remembered by God.
I don't need that. I don't want to be remembered by somebody else.
You want to enjoy it yourself.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
If you want to enjoy it yourself, then something new has to happen. And this is what is called resurrection or transformation of the cosmos or whatever in different, in the Christian tradition. And you will have analogues to that in other traditions as well. And I think that that there is a curious testimony in favor of a life after the death in almost all people around the globe. You have it in the African cultures, but you also have it in the Chinese cultures, very highly developed cultures, even without a very strong religious traditions. You have the notion that we all belong together, that there is a sort of continuity between our lives here and after our death, and that we also stand in a continuity with people who have died, like our relatives or other people close to us. But now we are really up in the speculative air, and we are now discussing an issue where I think you really cannot say, this I believe and this I know because I'm a believer. No, we have to realize that we are actually trying out ways of thinking eternal life, or at least post-mortal life, from within our different traditions, but also across different traditions in a sort of a cross-cultural thinking about these matters.
Regarding evolution and the death, the sometimes horrendous death of animals, is that something that God beforehand consciously, affirmatively planned?
Well, I was not part of the planning table, I would say, but I think yes. I think my intuitive response would be yes, that this is a sort of a necessary, hence also prospective cost of God who creates by creating freedom, room for self-development, and this has these costs to them.
And what would that say to you about the God that you believe in, for that God to have created the system of the world, the biological world, to include so much suffering?
Well, in a sense, I don't think that God is sitting on the top of the world. God is like the network that ties everything together, that encompasses everything, that also co-experiences what you and I and the animals are experiencing all the time. And so in that sense, this is part of a divine inclusion of creatures also in our failures. For otherwise, we would only be rescued or remembered for our nice deeds. But the whole point is, I think, that we are actually also remembered or saved or whatever you want to say in our failures. Because often it is in our failures we also show who we really are and who we are not.
So how do failures have to do with what God created in evolution? Is anything in evolution a failure of what God created, or is God creating evolution so that there can be failures within it?
I think that there are unavoidable failures. So I speak here about failures, I think, in two different senses. So it was a very good corrective question that you posed to me. In a sense, nothing is a failure seen in the bigger perspective, because this is the way the world is executed, or this is the way things happen. In that sense, if I go out here and a tree is falling down on me, it's not a failure. It is a fact of life before it's a failure. But I will experience as a failure. So I was talking about these subjective senses of failure, that so many of the facts of life we actually experience as failures and cannot but experience as failures.